Adoption of the agenda. Larry?
Now, on the agenda, we spent a little bit of time last night chatting about the mailboxes. And so if there's anything you'd like to say about the mailboxes on tonight's agenda, I'd prefer that it be done before road so that we can devote a substantial block of time for roads.
Okay, there's no objections, swap those two.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? Hearing no objection, let's approve the agenda information. All right, the new business and building is necessary. We get off to a very good exchange last night in the capital area especially. And I think we got some good opinions from a lot of different sides going on there. Did you want to tell us about the...
Oh, sure, I can do that. Regrettably, the video from last night is not as pristine as a single volunteer would like it to be. And so I would love anyone that would like better video, please get hold of me. Let's get this better, because this is just me doing it. This is me doing it as a community member, and it fails sometimes. And last night, case in point, the video is beautiful, but the audio starts reverberating about a third of the way through, and it progressively gets worse to the point where you can watch it, but you don't want to listen to it. And I regret that. And I wish that anyone, and I see a couple of people in the audience right now that would just love to volunteer, but they won't. And I appreciate that. So, anyone that would like to volunteer, please, we need help. This whole video thing on YouTube is done by a single volunteer from the community, and that's me. And I need help. I'm not a professional at this. If there is a professional, please stand up. We need to increase the sense of transparency for every one of our meetings. And that's what I'm trying to do. But I'm oftentimes failing at it, simply because I'm one guy. And so I would love if anyone would help. Thanks. Oh, and by the way, the video is still processing. It will be posted, so everybody can enjoy the video.
Would you like to make a motion about the meeting?
Yes, thank you. I would love to make a motion to go into a community as a whole type of discussion where we don't have to vote or have rounds of questions, and we can talk to each other.
Your second? Second. Okay, any objection? All right. Motion passes. All right, let's start with our budget presentations, and we're going to start with recreation, parks, and pools.
Good evening again, everyone. Maddie will be doing this presentation. It's on page 24.
Page 34.
Page 20.
All right, good evening. So the Recreation Department, we are funded through a special assessment, just as a reminder to everybody. The special assessment was approved for a 5-year period, and it started May 31st, 2018, and it's going to end May 31st, 2023. So we're a year into the whole process right now. The special assessment is to cover the operation and maintenance of the community center, which is the building we're in right now, the functions within the community center, and the pools and parks and trails. For the special assessment, the funding was locked in for the 5-year period when it was voted on by the community members. So that started June 1st, 2018 at $10.48 per month for developed lots. And it includes an annual 3% increase to account for inflation over the 5-year period. So for the special assessment, we are a very different type of department because we have to account for all of our expenses. Some of these expenses are usually shared by different departments, like custodial, or when maintenance works in the building, or recycling and trash. That's recorded in different departments like facilities or maintenance, that kind of thing. But that's not our case because we're supposed to be accurately representing the true cost of how to run this building and parks and trails. And so we have to account for like custodian's time. Anytime maintenance works over here, they bill the time to the special assessment. So it's just kind of different how we're doing it here. But in short, what we did differently this year, which I really like, is we split the recreation department into 3 different budget departments to better accurately reflect how we're spending money. So we have like the community center department, which accounts for this structure, this building, the functions within this building, like staff and the fitness center and clubs and classes and all the other activities here. We have a pools department, which accounts for the main pool and the quiet pool. And we have a parks and trails budget department as well that has the 2 park staff and all of the costs associated with keeping up our parks and trails. So that's something different that we're doing this year compared to initially how it was set up. And we're accounting for income that way too. So the way we're generating income, like for people, the public to pay to go to the pool, that's reflected in pools now, Instructors is reflected in the community center budget as well. So that's something different. Just wanted to know, we've been trying to find more revenue sources. Like we amended the pool fees this year actually, to generate more income from the public. We redid our trainer fees, which resulted in more trainers and class instructors coming because it's more of an industry standard now. So we had a lot more things like personal trainers, and we have a dog training class going on right now. We have like a painting class, yoga by the quiet pool, all sorts of stuff is kind of popping up, which is exciting. We rent walkers now, if you're interested. But I wanted to go over the significant increases for the 2020 budget because really we are not proposing adding any new staff, doing anything differently, or any new projects compared to last year. It's really just the cost of doing business, the outside market forces, which is what's affecting our budget. So we're not proposing to do anything differently compared to what we did this year. But the main increases that we'd like to talk about are minimum wage. A lot of our employees are right on the cusp of that. So we have like front desk staff, the parks crew, all of our lifeguards are very close. And so, it's going up by $1.50 in 2020, which is a big deal for our department, since almost all of our employees are right on the cusp of that. Utilities is another big one that's going up. That was the accounting department reached out to the utility companies, and that's a reflection of what we anticipate them to go up this year. Building repair and maintenance, you'll see that as well reflected mostly in the community center budget. And that's because this building was literally a barn. And it was built out by volunteers. I met a man the other day who said, yeah, when I was a young lad, I came and I framed in the rest of this building. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So it's literally a barn with horses and cows and that kind of thing. And, my point is it wasn't meant to be used in this way. It wasn't meant to be used as a commercial facility. And because it hasn't been getting maintained over the years, we're seeing a huge increase in the cost of maintaining this building. So that's another reason why that's going up. We're also anticipating a large increase in cost, like market cost for raw materials, like landscaping materials. That's like pea gravel, wood, landscaping fabric, all those things we're anticipating to go up as well. But I'm having to go through each of the budgets with you and go over any questions that you have. But really that's what the main increases are. The things that are more than 3% budget changes. There's those things. Any questions?
Karen?
the community center, how many FTE are in this budget?
Please, switch to that. Jennifer's going to switch to that, but really, I'm the only full-time benefited employee. We have 2 front desk staff employees. They're both can work up to 29.5 hours a week. So those are the 2, and we have to pay for custodial help. Like I said, we have to account for all that cost. So we pay for part of Chris's time, and then we have budgeted a part-time seasonal positions for 5 months. It's for a custodial position for the summertime, and that's up to 29.5 hours a week as well. So those are the community center employees. That's 3.16.
Okay, so on the rec community center, page 25, salaries are only going up 10%. So that's obviously less than the $1.50. Obviously, those part-time people, I would assume, fall into that category of having to get that increase.
Yeah, they're right above minimum wage. So they're at the 2020 minimum wage. So, we'd like to keep our employees and show them that we respect their work, and so we would like to offer them, some type of raise. But they're at the 2020 minimum wage. That's why it's like that.
Okay, and then what about payroll taxes? I know Jennifer, you and I chatted about this yesterday for some departments, but this one, we reduced our budget, but if I look at 18 actuals, it's more than both of these years, but we're not changing the FTE, so what is that about?
Sarah, I don't recall specifically what that decrease was, but I can look into that and email the board an answer tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
I have one question also on page 25. You have increase in trash and recycling services. Are we still doing recycling? I thought that we were cutting it.
No, it's just general trash, general refuge waste.
Okay.
We have some recycling services in the golf department. That's the only department that has recycling, but the geo titles are the same across all departments.
Question. On page 26,
Mm-hmm.
presenting the totals for expenses. So our expenses are outputting our revenues. Is that accurate?
That's right, yeah. So like I said, the special assessment set it up to have a 3% increase each year. But because of these market forces, we're beyond that 3% guaranteed, increase. So we are asking for a little bit more money just because of these market forces.
If you, it's on page, summarized on page 14 of your packet.
Question about, I'm trying to understand, so the special assessment revenue is on the top, obviously we see a little bit less than 3% increase. But what are the expenses that are immediately following that? Are all of these costs included in that, or what is in specifically that 4011 on page 24?
Great question. So the 4010 is the gross special assessment anticipated if 100% of our members paid the special assessment, but we're only budgeted at 93% collection. So that's the write down to get you to a net number on the total special assessment income line.
So that 388 or 399 for 2020 is to cover this budget, pools, and parks.
Correct.
Anything else? Okay.
Go ahead. Pools.
Okay. you'd like to, I think Parks is next, actually.
Parks, okay.
That's on page 34.
Sorry.
Yeah, so one of the unique increases here is that uniform GL, and I think Jacob explained that yesterday. We used to contract out that uniform cost, but we are deciding to switch over to buying uniforms ourselves, which is actually going to save us money. So that is like, used to be accounted for in a different department, and now it needs to be accounted for in our department, which is why it seems like a large increase. But the other big percentage increases, you know, salaries, then payroll taxes. I kind of explained that landscaping, repair and maintenance, and that raw materials, we just anticipate those, you know, those items to go up, and as well as fuel.
Do we have the FTE chart that you pulled up earlier in our packet?
I think so.
Do you know what page? Oh, here.
Page 51. And then Sarah, to answer your question about the payroll taxes, I was just sitting here thinking about it. It is the same reason. It's because our maintenance people, parks people, janitorial people, they're all the highest payroll tax rate. And so in 2019, we thought our payroll taxes were going to increase, and they didn't increase. They actually went down. So the budgeted amount between 2019 and what we expect in 2020 is different. So in 2019, we thought payroll taxes were going to go up, and that's what's in our budget. But in 2020, we have an actual payroll tax rate that's less than what we budgeted. And then we expect a small increase on that, maybe, but only of 3%.
But I guess 2018 for an actual number is more, so we're expecting it. That's irrelevant. We're saying this is going down.
So in 2018, pools, parks, and recreation were all recorded in the health club department. And so it's in 2019 that we split them out into separate departments. So that's why, if you look at in your packet, the 2018 actuals under salaries for parks is 0.
So if I take the 367 is what it looks like is the special assessment revenue, and then I take those three budgets, it's 392,000. So it's not covering fully. I thought that we were going to make sure that the special assessment covered 100% of these operations.
I think we have some income coming in too.
So if you look on page 14, it's a summary of all 3 of the departments.
Right. So I took those three.
And it nets to a $25,000 loss. Because Maddie was speaking to, the increases are more than the 3% for the department.
So we're not decreasing other areas to make sure we're staying within that. I thought that was the plan, was that the special assessment was going to cover all of these things. That was the big.
Well, the special assessment didn't account for that 2020 increase. It's $1.50. That's a huge amount, especially in salaries. You know, so it was put together by volunteers, and they did a great job, but it just didn't account for all of the market expenses.
So are we evaluating charging for the pool or something to account for that, or we're just leaving that?
I'm confused by your question.
I guess the whole idea was that the special assessment would cover these pieces, and if it doesn't cover these pieces, we should be cutting back in these areas or charging additional fees to members to offset this charge.
Well, I think that would be a board decision if you want to charge members. We do charge the public to use our facilities. So we charge for them to use the gym, the pool, you know, shelter rentals, that kind of thing. And we're only seeing an increase in the amount of income that we're getting for the pools. Like, this year's been great. Let's see here. We've already collected $4,621 in pool sales, and August is our busiest season. So I think we're being really conservative in income too, because I think we're only going to get more popular, especially with that cardio equipment that people seem to really like. So that's what we're doing.
Anything else? Okay, moving on.
So we just have the pool's budget left, and that's for the main pool and the quiet pool.
Page 36.
So the only significant increase here is in salaries, and that's because we are required to have lifeguards at the main pool by state law. It's a Class A pool, and because we're open to the public, we have to have lifeguards at it. Unlike the quiet pool, which is a swim at your own risk facility, because it's the only members-only facility in Sun Valley, if I understand that correct. And we need to have lifeguards, so we want to be able to keep up with market rate. The city of Bellingham is starting to staff more beaches, like Blodell Donovan. They started staffing that this year, and that draws away from our employee pool. Primarily, we employ miners who live in Sudden Valley, and so if they started to go elsewhere, it would be a big deal because we have to retain a certain lifeguard ratio, 1 lifeguard for every 25 people, and that is a state requirement. And if we can't do that, that means we have to let in less people to the pool, reduce our pool hours, that kind of thing. So we want to make sure we keep up with market rate for payroll.
So,
Okay, on the pools, the main income pool, so we have $463 this year, we're projecting $4,900 for next year, why?
So this is through 5/31/19, and we are in July. So that's not an accurate reflection of the income that we have collected.
Any idea what an updated number is?
Yeah, I just said it. It's $4,621 in pool sales as of, I believe, the other day. And the goal for this year was 6,000, so we're definitely gonna surpass that.
So if the goal for this year is 6,000, why are we putting 4,900 for next year?
We can increase that. It's not a big deal.
And then what about the quiet pool? Why is that 0?
That is because it's a members-only facility. So the public is not actually allowed to use that pool. And we only charge the public to use our facility, so that's why it's a 0.
So what's the 2019 income then?
So that is because all of the income used to be like recorded together, and we required to have fees for the quiet pool because technically we have to charge for guests, but it's very rare that a member will walk a guest over to our facility and have them pay to use the quiet pool.
I'd like to add a little bit more information there. The quiet pool is also available as a rental facility,
Oh, that's right.
which you do gain some revenue.
We do.
And I'd like to comment about the 4,900 budget for the main pool income projection. I don't recommend that we increase that because we're trying to be conservative on income projections. Am I wrong there?
I think we would go for that, so,
If we're gonna be conservative on it, I think we should be conservative on expenses and cut that. I mean, I don't agree with that at all. I think we should be accurate what we expect. If we're at 46.21, August will hopefully be our best month. That should be a significant additional amount. Going back down to basically 300 more than we're at currently is crazy. I don't think that's accurate at all. So I think it's making it look worse. Also, I would be advocating for us to reduce the expenses here to match the special assessment income, because that was the idea behind the special assessment that the members voted on. So I would like to give us every penny we can that's reasonable to offset that.
Sure.
Funny thing about special assessments and petitions is that there are unintended consequences from time to time, as in unintended expenses, how much money was unanticipated that we had to spend for the access cards? It ran into the thousands.
We spend a very large amount in access cards, and it's because, you know, the volunteers had a great idea, one free access card per household, but we have so many people who come in to get access cards. We issued 1,848 access cards last year. They cost us $8 each. So we have to account for that expense, and we've issued 530 access cards this year, and it's only going to keep going. That's what we're doing like every day, just taking in applications. So
There were other items that were not anticipated. I think garbage, recycling was one of those items. But these expenses that were anticipated for the recreation facilities as a part of the special assessment sometimes are unachievable simply because they were outside of the scope of knowledge of the people that put the special assessment together. And so we have to make up for that. And that's just what the community does. We pull together and make it work the way that the special assessment was intended to make it work. Sometimes it's going to cost us more than that. And I think that's where we're at.
So I agree that obviously it was volunteers that put it together. They can't think of everything. They can't know everything. But the idea behind it was for these specific services and the members that are using these specific services. I think it's reasonable to say, hey, this was put together by volunteers. It was brought forward with this plan. However, these are the actual costs that it's been, and this is the cost of that. So we have to increase the fee to use these facilities by that amount to cover those costs. I think that's reasonable. I think it's explainable to the members. And it's just, unfortunately, the downside of how this is, you know, now we have access. Now we've done a special assessment and we can see how much this would cost. Access cards are a great example of that. So we can talk about that when we talk about budget stuff. But my other question is on the last line of page 36, pool management. Is that the lifeguards or what's that one?
no, that is for Sesco. They are a professional pool management company. They do all of our chemicals, filter cleaning. They can vacuum the pool. They set up the pool for the season. If anything goes wrong with it, you know, they are the certified pool management company who we can hold responsible. We don't want our employees dealing with those kind of chemicals.
So, okay, so when I'm looking at actuals, in 17 we spent 31,000, 18 we spent 27,000. How come we're projecting that down for 19 and then continuing to be down in 20?
I can answer that. So, I don't recall for 2015, but in 2016, 17, and for 2016 and 17, the YMCA managed the pool, and we helped subsidize some of their costs. So we paid part of the fees, but not all of the fees. In 2018, we paid for all of the fees, but it was just for part of a year. And in 2019, it's just the timing of expenses, so that contract's not complete yet. And then Maddie's done a great job at working with the company to reduce the cost of our contract going forward.
Yeah, so our parks employees can do some of the things that normally we would pay that pool management company to do. Like he costs $99 an hour. We don't want him brushing the sides of the pool. We have park staff who can do that. So we really do try to use our staff to our full capabilities. Or, yeah, they can skim the pool, they can brush the sides of the pool, and they do off-season pool maintenance as well, because people forget about, oh yeah, you have to maintain the pools in the off-season, or else they grow algae, they stain the pool, the pool surface gets stained if you don't do that. So they do a lot of that too.
Madam President, just a couple of questions on this. In general, I guess this is more for Jennifer. If we're earning above what we had budgeted on a particular item, that money, particularly for this area, stays in that area, does it not? Or is it siphoned off to someone else?
I don't think I understand your question. I'm sorry.
We were looking at pool income, talking about this year and maybe very high, higher than we had budgeted. And so next year, it's a little bit lower estimate. So if we earn more, does that money stay in Parks and Rec, or does it get used somewhere else?
In the case of Parks and Recreation, because it's a special assessment, it stays in there. It'll actually have after talking with our auditors, starting next month, our internal financial statements will reflect a separate equity line just for the rec special assessment, so you can see how much has been earned or lost in that account over the years going forward. So you'll know that if at the end of the special assessment, if you had a gain, well, now we've got more money to continue to spend on that in the next year. Or if you had a loss, then it'll cover all the dues that we have yet to collect on the special assessment for people that are delinquent in their dues.
Okay. Then do we have an idea in particular exactly what the difference is between what the special assessment is bringing in or has brought in this year and what our expenses were overall for Parks and Rec this year? Do we have that number?
For 2019 year to date,
So far, sure. Probably do.
you can just add it all up, but I don't have it handy.
Yeah, that's my problem. How much adding?
So through May 31st, 2019, which is what these year-to-date actuals are, it's a profit of $12,452. And if you look on page 14 of your packet, you'll see that 2019 is budgeted to have a profit of $3,204.
So it seems, if I'm hearing those numbers and interpreting them correctly, please correct me if I'm wrong, it seems that the excess expenses have not exceeded the special assessment?
Not for 2019. However, we did have a loss on the special assessment in 2018 because it was the first year to get going, and that's just from the date of the special assessment going forward to the end of the year. That doesn't include the first 6 months of the year. There was no special assessment then.
Thank you.
Madam President Paula?
Oh. I didn't write it down when you said it. What is the dues percentage that the 2020 budget is based on?
The collections
The
percentage?
collection,
92?
93, I think.
93, you said.
93.
93% collections.
What are we at currently on our collections rate?
96% collections. Oh, excuse me, 92% collections. I'm sorry.
We budgeted next year at 92.
Correct. We're at 91% budgeted for 2019.
Oh, that's,
We were at 93% in 2018. Yeah.
Oh, we were budgeted this year for 90.
91% in 2019, 92% in 2020.
Anything else on parks or pools and so forth? Okay, seeing no questions, move on to the common costs.
Common costs are page 15 and 16. In these areas that I will be touching on, is our real estate tax, legal, and insurance. Real estate tax is set by the county, and that is something that we've put a 3% increase in. Our legal services, we have put in $50,000, exactly what we have budgeted for 2019. Again, the more we send stuff to legal, the money will be used. If we don't have to send anything to legal, we don't use it. But you should have that in there as well. We have talked to our insurance broker. We are in the process right now of going out, and they always shop out the insurance to get the best bid. They do anticipate a small increase, and that is shown here in the budget for 2020.
Page 16, regulatory compliance, we have none for next year. Top line?
I do not have any in there, no.
Okay, yeah, that goes in and out.
I mean, we've had it in the last, you had $2,000 in 2018, and you haven't really used anything.
And so far, nothing this year anyway? Okay.
Question?
Eric?
I don't see anything in here to help with community outreach, for example, interfacing with county, state agencies.
I don't know where that would even fall under. Do you? I mean, what would you be looking to do, and what would be your number you want to put in there?
Yeah. There has been.
I don't have a concept of
Okay.
a number, I was just noticing that we have one.
A point of information, we basically rely on volunteers for all of that activity.
Exactly.
We spend a good deal of time talking with legislators. We had spent an incredible amount of time talking with various levels of county government, but that is either in the course of a particular project, which would be budgeted to that project because it's carried out by staff, or it's voluntary. It's primarily board members who are doing that work. If there should be costs involved, then perhaps we would need to get some reimbursement. But I know for the efforts that I've done, I've never asked for gasoline, or usually printing would be the cost besides gasoline. Gasoline ain't cheap, but I just throw that in.
You ride an electric motorcycle.
When the weather is good, yes. When the weather is not good, gasoline is still expensive. And by the way, because I don't pay gas tax, my tabs cost a lot more than gasoline tabs.
Comment, Sarah?
Question on the insurance premiums, 4%. I'm glad to hear we're shopping around and looking at that. Yesterday, Jennifer, you made a comment about a 15% increase, but I think that was medical insurance, right?
This insurance is
This is our
D&O,
property.
general
Yeah.
liability, property, all that.
Okay, and the 15 was medical, right? Okay.
I have a question. I guess I'm on a 100,000 foot level. Have we ever considered having legal counsel attend board meetings? I mean, was that part of your discussion?
That, you can have legal come, they will charge us, but I don't know what you guys have done in the past. I have not felt the need that we need legal here for a board meeting yet. I don't think there's been anything that has risen to that level to have legal here.
Well, I mean, it's more of like an efficiency when you have legal counsel attend meetings to direct the conversation, that kind of thing. And
There's a cost
Limits.
associated to that. Every time he comes, it's an hourly price. So, I mean, yeah, we can have him, but you're going to use up more of that money.
right, I mean, it's open-ended question. I'd love to hear how the rest of the board feels, or if we can table it.
That's up to you guys. If you guys want legal here, it's up to you guys. And if that's the case, we'll have to increase that number.
We're just managing a lot of assets, and I feel like having,
I'm sorry, Andrew, I couldn't hear that.
we manage a large, in terms of dollar figures, we're managing assets that are significant in terms of dollar figures, and when we make decisions, it's always helpful to have legal counsel.
I can tell you in other jobs, Andrew, the one that I came from was a $9.5 million budget, and our counsel was never there unless needed.
Yeah, point of information, that's the way we've done it for as long as I've been involved on the board and the organization here. We haven't. I do know that for the city and the county and probably for the Port Authority here, they probably do have council. I know city and county do. The Port Authority probably does, but those people are mostly staff. And so it's a little different because we have outside counsel, and we have always tried to keep their participation as inexpensive as possible.
Okay, well, if there's no need, there's no need. I feel like there is, but, okay.
Carol?
Just to follow on to that, there are many times where we have had discussions where we say, gee, we really feel like our attorney should weigh in on this. And the procedure then is usually is tasked with that, either Leslie or the general manager is tasked to contact the attorney and get an opinion. And weigh in on it, and then it's brought back to us. Now, I've never seen a situation where we had an urgent need to have an attorney opinion on the spot for a meeting. But if we've anticipated that we needed some counsel present, we have invited, and I think Rich has been, in the 5.5 years I've been on the board, I think he's maybe been to 3 or 4 meetings to attend for specific situations, but I can't imagine a situation where we get ourselves in trouble, because we're very cautious about not committing ourselves to anything that sounds like it could be kind of a legal bailiwick.
Yeah, and many times if we do have a question, we will submit it to the attorney before the meeting so that we make sure that we are acting, according to our bylaws or whatever else.
Right, no, I just wonder if we looked at the real cost of doing business, if we took us volunteers and equated that to the staff as a staff salary level, and then the time it takes for legal to look at it, review it, get back, rather if they were just present in the meeting and it was an efficient meeting, that it might actually be more cost feasible to have legal counsel present during our meetings. Anyway, I don't mean to belabor the conversation any further.
Yeah.
Just a quick comment. It, so far, in my experience, has not been necessary to have that kind of fast turnaround and avoid staff work. I can see circumstances where that might occur. And to the extent that that has arisen, again, we have tried to anticipate that and get counsel here for that particular issue. Just the estimation that we have had so far is that that is not normally necessary. There aren't that many legal issues that come up. Things could change, but that's so far been our assessment of the situation.
Anybody else? Okay, move on to operations.
Operations and the views?
Page 31.
Good evening. So on page 31, you'll see our income sources. As I've mentioned before, our administration is not a revenue source. But we do have a couple of things that bring in a little bit of money. As you can see, maps and signs is one of them, but that seems to be slowing down as the years go on. You'll see in the miscellaneous income, a really big jump in 16 and 17 and this year, and that was for ice melt. So we sold a lot of ice melt this year. But as you can see, our revenues, we're talking about $1,500 for the year, so it's not significant. You'll see as we go through this quickly that we've actually eliminated a lot more than we've added. So there's a lot of good news in here. We've taken out the general administrative budget because we've found that we actually don't need it. We were putting in recruitment costs in there, pre-employment drug screens, et cetera, and we've now created a separate line item for that, so we've eliminated the budget for general. Bank fees and charges, and it's gone up 14.29%, and I'm hoping Jennifer, you can speak to that, I'm not sure. Thank
Just
you.
the $3,000 is just an average based on the prior years. It's merchant fees for at the front desk.
And it's gone down. It's going down a significant amount. Moving on, the GM discretionary fund, it was agreed that we would increase that. And Joe, if you want to address what we do with that?
That, the GM discretionary fund is used for the staff appreciation, whether it's taking, during the snowstorm, we took the guys to lunch, or if they were doing long shifts, we would set up stuff at Tino's or at the village market so they could get coffee and food so that they, we don't want to burn them out, is what it is. So that's what that is used for.
Okay, printing and copying, that has gone up because the cost of paper has gone up significantly. However, that is going to change because at least this part of the budget, because we've just renegotiated the lease on our copy machine, and that was after the 31st of May, and they've indicated a cost savings of $5,000 over the next 3 years. So and that includes printing, copying, and leasing equipment. So if you were to combine those two budgets, subtract $5,000 over the next 3 years, that's what you'd be looking at. So we'll decrease that by about $1,600. And then moving on to the next page. Postage has gone up 5%, and that's just because postage has gone up 5%. Salaries, what you're going to see here is the benefits increase, which you already know about. We don't have any minimum wage employees in our office. However, what we do have are employees that are being paid under market. And we went through each of them with a benchmarking survey, and this is still not putting them at market. This is just getting them a little bit closer. So, because the actual percentage that we're out of range is quite a bit more than this. So this is a request to see if we can get them a little bit closer. Yes, Carol?
You're using a term I'm not sure everyone will understand, that they are not at market. Can you kind of define what you mean by that?
Sure, yes. When you take a salary survey, you get a low, median, or average, and then high range of pay for every job description. And so we have, as you know, we've talked about the very, very low unemployment rate right now. And so with this market survey goes to everyone it starts in Whatcom County in our demographic. If they can't get significant information, for instance, it's a very unique position, such as perhaps an ACC coordinator. We don't have a lot of those here. And so they will go out into other demographics, even if it's in a different location, to find a very similar situation, a similar job, and they'll get us the best estimate that they have for that salary. And that's what's considered the market rate for a salary. What I will say, and I know we've talked about this last night, but I don't know if you know that the cost of replacing a $10 an hour retail employee is $3,328. And that's the high turnover. This is a 16% of annual salary for high turnover, low paying jobs, and we have a lot of those. And so it's become really important that we do everything that we can to make certain that our employees are treated as fairly as they would in another place. Not giving them selling them the keys to the barn or anything, but anyway, that's what that increase is for. And that's probably the most significant. You'll see another decrease in costs of equipment lease and rental, and you'll see a little bit more of a decrease once we find out exactly how much our new copier system is going to save us. But overall, we're looking at an 8% increase across the board. Any questions? Sarah?
Sure. What's the recruiting expense on page 31 for the 2020 budget?
Okay, that's a good question. So normally the recruiting expenses is for things like pre-employment drug screening, advertising, things like that. But what we decided to do is purchase the use of a payroll benchmarking software. And that cost is, I think, $5,000, just under $5,000. And it's been agreed that is going to be an extremely valuable tool to make certain that we don't have that turnover. And finding out the cost of what it takes to replace an employee made that cost justifiable. So that, because it's a payroll, a benchmarking system, that goes into the recruiting.
Haven't you done that in the past?
Yes, however, the data that we have, because we have such specific positions here, we found it's not as accurate. We've gone out to our recruiters and other people that, they put out salaries all the time, and we find out that the data that we're getting from the Employment Security Department isn't accurate for us. And that the systems that we looked at are far more intricate. This is all they do. And if they have to go out individually and research one position, they do that. It's not just picking up a list from the state of Washington and hoping that somehow you match it. We get as close as we possibly can, but this was a very valuable tool. Once we went through the demo, we talked to the folks, they showed us exactly what it does, and it looks like it's going to be an important use.
So I guess how confident are you that we really are below market rate if you feel like we don't have accurate data to go off of?
That's a good question, too. The majority of our positions, for instance, all of our minimum wage positions, administrators, things like that, we have confidence that we know exactly what's out there. All you have to do is, like, we talk to our recruiters, and what they're offering out on Indeed and everything else, and you can tell just by looking what's available. But and these are the positions that I have in admin. So it's other positions within our organization that are more specialized that felt like it was really important to get more specific data.
So what percentage, just generally, would you say, you said a lot of the minimum wage positions you feel comfortable that you can find comparables and stuff. So what percentage of our staff would you say are so specialized that this software would be useful for?
Well, I think the majority of our full-time regular employees, with the exception of some of our administrative, but everybody in golf and turf care, these are not common positions to come across in Whatcom County.
So the software, how long, is there like an annual maintenance fee with it, or how does that work?
It's a 3-year maintenance. It's 3 years, but there's a $1,500 buyout if we decide it's not useful. So we made sure that we had an out clause if we decide it's actually not cost effective.
So is that maintenance fee included in the $7,400 for year one then?
I'm sorry?
Is the $7,400 that's budgeted for 2020, does that include year one maintenance?
Oh, it does. Yeah, it includes the entire thing plus any recruitment costs.
Question on top page 32, special general meetings. We do not budget for those.
Never have.
Okay.
And we've
Because I'm
had
looking
3
back
since
at
I've been here.
expenses in the past, we're looking $12,000 to $16,000 for the SGMs that we have spent in 2016, 17, and 18. So,
What?
okay. Yeah, I know, it's a difficult one. You don't know if you're going to have one or not.
Right.
Okay.
Well, with anything SGN-wise, yes, and there's always unanticipated costs, as we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And that $16,000 to actually do it
Yeah.
is a part of it.
Okay. Anybody else? No? Okay, moving on to accounting.
Great, that's on page 17. Okay, so accounting doesn't generate a whole lot of income, but there is some, and that's the $125 title transfer fee every time a home is sold in Sudden Valley. For the last 2.5 years, we've had 10% turnover of home sales in Sudden Valley. That doesn't necessarily mean that we've had 10% new owners, but 10% of the properties and or homes have been sold and repurchased. Could be the same owner. So based on the prior year history, I think that we could increase that annual budget to $30,000. Bank charges and fees are stable. And that's for mainly NSF fees. So the bank charges us for a check that gets bounced back, and then we charge the member a fee that covers that and our processing time and accounting. Printing and copying is anticipated to go up 5%. That's for the coupons that go out to pay your dues. We actually have a significant savings in our payroll service fees. So at the start of this year, we switched to a new payroll provider, and that payroll provider offers us more services. They also offer HRIS services, so Human Resource Information System services, and payroll, and it's all in one system. And so it's not only more efficient, but it's actually a cost savings, and they're a great company to work with. So I'm pleased with that. Our audit and tax services for 2020, that's expected to go down just a little bit. It's our new auditor's contract is a little less than the prior auditors, and then there's a small contingency in there. Postage is expected to go up. If you go to page 18, we have a small increase in wages to avoid wage compression, make sure that our employees are paid close to the market. And then IT and support services is approximately the same. We have a small increase in the cost of our C3 software for Town Square. And then other professional services is a accounting temp that we bring in part-time, usually during budgeting season, just to assist with the day-to-day while we get the budget out. And so I expect a small increase in that due to wage compression and outside forces, similar to our other vendor, Pacific Security, which Norm will speak to next, actually. So that's it for accounting. Any questions?
Sarah?
On the title and recording fees, you're budgeting something in 2020 that we've exceeded the last 4 years.
Yeah, so I don't know how many home sales there are going to continue to be. It's completely market driven based on how homes are selling in Sudden Valley. This year alone, for example, this time last year, we had 55 more home sales than we do this year. And so maybe this trend of a 10% home sales in Sudden Valley is slowing down. And I'd like to be conservative in that estimate and not over budget, because I don't know what the realty market's going to do.
So even though we've hit above that in 4 years, you're still not comfortable that that's a long enough trend for that?
I mean, I'm not a real estate professional.
Okay, and then the payroll service fees, you said you got a new one and they provide some HRIS services, so they don't do the pay analysis service? Did you guys talk to them about, yeah, you did? Okay, it's not something they offer, okay.
Anybody else? Andrew?
I believe you mentioned it already. So HR is included in this department budget? Like, who does our HR? Who's HR? If you're in a...
Lisa?
Right, okay.
Operations?
So that's an operation, so if you can just enlighten me here for a minute, I might be backtracking then. Have you considered any culture training to be included in the budget? I guess this is more to Joe. Like, have you guys talked about internally, having a professional come in and provide, general culture training to improve the overall, employee experience, which in turn helps the community experience? I mean,
We've had a gentleman come in and do some training for us. That is something that Lisa and I can look at. We don't have anything in the budget, but that is something we can put in. The gentleman came in and did some active shooter classes for us. So, I mean, we definitely have the ability to do it. It's just we can put it in the budget.
Well, I mean, it's really just if it's up to you. Right?
Yeah, I know.
I mean,
I
if
can
it's
put it
something
in.
that you think...
I can find room to put it in.
Okay,
I believe in this budget. I think I can make it work.
sure. No, it's just a general question.
Madam President, excuse me, Madam President Whitney.
I just have a question on the printing and copying costs. You said that was for the coupons that we paid with. I know mine go in the recycle bin. And I'm just wondering how many more members actually use AutoPay or that new Town Square. Would it be worth maybe even on the November ballot, if we can include questionnaire, how many people use those so that we can get a real cost of, if we can cut it in half or even a third for people that actually use those coupons?
So that's a great question. The only people that we don't send coupons to, and you'll see a significant decrease in our coupon printing in 2020 and 2019, especially over 2017 and 2018. And part of 2017 and 2018 is because we had to do extra coupons for the SGM. But everyone who's on ACH, where the association initiates the ACH, not where you call your bank and have your bank send us a check, that's different, but where the association initiates the ACH, we remove those people from receiving coupons and we just send them a letter. Now, for everyone else who has their bank send a payment, we don't currently have a way to integrate that into our accounting software. But we do receive approximately 150 to 200 payments a week through our lockbox service. And so those are all people that are sending in payments via coupons. That's give or take 800 members a month.
Anything else? Thank you. Moving on to security, ACC, and hazardous trees.
Page 38.
Good evening. So my name is Norm Smith. I'm going to be presenting the ACC and security budget. I'd like to just start with the significant items that you will see, and Jennifer already touched on that, and that's the increase of the security contract with Pacific Security. They have asked for a 7.93% increase this year over last year. And that is due to their feeling the forces generated by the minimum wage law in Washington State to their workforce. So being a good vendor, they're passing the cost on to us, the consumer. So that is the largest of the items in this budget. You'll see a lot of it has 0%, no changes really. Other things that are coming up that do have increases are things that are market force driven, such as fuel and utilities. The other items are fairly much within the same range as last year or 2019's budget. And you'll also notice that much like with was already stated by my other colleagues, that there is some salary increases, because I do have the ACC consultant that's paid out of my budget. Was Jessica, and now it's Jenny Torres. And I also pay a 25% at a time for the accounting or collections clerk for administrative support and tasks that she performs, because we are, unlike the other departments, I don't have a lot of other additional staff. That's pretty much it. And other than that, I would open that up for questions from the panel.
Questions? Sarah?
So there's 2.25 staff in here. Any of those minimum wage people?
No, they're not. Again, it's the ACC specialist and also the accounting clerk.
Eric?
I remember that in the budget assumptions, we removed the extra patrol behind the package delivery around Christmas. Does this increased number reflect the removal of that, or is that accounted for somewhere else?
This number that you see listed for the Pacific Security does not include having the additional officer for the holiday package delivery. Much like with hazardous trees, if we get in a position where that is a requirement, we'll be putting in a UDR request for those fundings. Same thing with the hazardous tree, anything over the budgeted amount, and that's happened every year for the last 2 years. You'll be looking at a UDR account as long as UDR is a viable option.
Thanks.
Sarah?
I'm assuming the answer is going to be similar to the last conversation we had, but new home construction, 35,000. Again, we've well exceeded that from 2016 on.
That's correct, because it's only budgeted at 10 new home starts per year, because that's not a predictable number where we can forecast and say, we're going to have 30 or we're going to have 10. So the conservative approach taken to it is to budget it as 10, and if it is increased, then it's increased.
So just, I guess, a general comment to the board is I wish we would be as conservative with our expenses as we are with our revenue, because we are very conservative with our revenue projections. Expenses were growing up all over the board, and the members end up paying dues based on those. If we exceed those revenue projections, their dues don't go down. They're still where they are. So I think we need to be looking at that more equally.
Questions? Carol?
In this particular instance, there is a related expense that is commensurate with whatever we decide. If we have 35,000, if we have 10 housing starts, we bring in 35,000, but the amount we pay our contracted person who helps with all the processing of housing starts is also lower than it ends up being. So in this case, it's not 35,000 is way less than we're going to get. If we double that, certainly it would be good, but we'd also have to double the expense that goes with that. So I'd prefer us to stay conservative, because could leave us in an usually bad situation if we anticipated a lot more than we do, because we also adjust our number of people who work for us. We have a second contracted person who becomes available and is hired if we need them for that, and so that does increase our expense. So I think it's less complex for us to keep it at 10 for now. It's worked for us for a number of years, but we don't know when the housing market's going to take a turn the other way.
No, we don't. In fact, speaking to actually our county deputy, Maple Falls is starting to become more of a spot to relocate to, because the housing is cheaper. They're putting in infrastructure such as cell towers and things like that. County's putting in a second residential deputy. So it's a number we can't accurately predict with that, much like what does an emergency cost? I don't know. It'll all depend what it does. So I would agree that a conservative outlook at that is probably a wise precaution.
Other questions, comments? Paula?
I'm just wondering how much work this would be. Because I think there's some value in looking at it, maybe not coming up to the 50,000 that we were in 2016. But the same thing with the pools, where you see a big difference and a highly conservative number. I think it's 3 cents per thousand to the dues.
Approximately, per month.
Would it be possible, I think the whole board meets next week to discuss these two meetings. Would it be possible to just see what that does to the dues if we were a little bit less conservative in some of those areas where we see a big bridge?
Yes, that's possible, yeah.
It would be helpful if you were to identify for Jennifer what those specific things were that you'd like to see. Because, she can guess, but I think it'd be important, the two that we just talked about.
I think those are the ones that I've seen that were, I think those were the big ones.
All right, and then if anyone has any others, then give her plenty of time.
How many new home starts does the board predict that there will be next year based on prior year trends?
I'm comfortable with a staff recommendation.
I'm going to interject here. You cannot move a budget based off an assumption that you cannot quantify. That is a detriment to the association. No one in this room, not anybody, can tell me how many new homes we're going to have. And at one point in time, that number will completely disappear because you will have no lots left.
I don't disagree fully with you, but I would say the whole concept of a budget is a guess.
It is, but
When I mean, whether you're guessing 10 or, I'm just saying 35,000, that's a large difference between 35,000 and 113,000 actual in 2018.
You had 34 billed to start last year.
Right, but even in 2016, it was closer to 51. I'm not even suggesting that in the end, that we change it, but I'd like to see what that looks like in an effect on the dues in the areas where we've been very, very conservative.
Okay. So what's the number? You guys tell us the number, we'll plug it in there.
Let me look at it and I'll get back to you.
Okay.
Madam President, Larry?
Yeah, just for the sake of discussion, I agree with the concept that's been requested. I would suggest do an average of the home starts this year and last year, and then cut that in half and use that as the number possible for next year. That's just a stab, obviously. However, I will say I absolutely agree with staff. My understanding of a conservative budget is you expect your costs to be higher and your income to be lower, because the last thing you want to do is come up short. It's far better to come up ahead. Then you have funds that roll over into the next year, and you can then possibly lower your need to increase dues the next year despite the impact of inflation and wage increases mandated by the state, et cetera, et cetera. So in my understanding of a conservative budget process, you hope for extra funds. If you get them, you use them some other time. You don't try and rely on them in the immediate coming year because you can't predict.
Sarah?
So actuals are solid numbers, and I would rather look at actuals than budgets because that's what really happened. Yes, you can't predict it, but as Paula said, the whole budget is an estimate. Nobody can know exactly where we're going to land. The point is, my idea of a conservative budget is where you're conservative in what you're going to spend and you cut costs. You don't give everybody raises. For example, our professional security services is going up 7.93%. They're getting hit with the same minimum wage increase we are. Most of their employees are minimum wage or very close to it, and they're going up 7.93%. Yet, almost all of our departments are exceeding that percentage. This is not conservative. This is not trying to slim down how much we're spending. This is, we're going to be really conservative in how much revenue we're going to bring in, and we're going to increase our expenses. That's not conservative. That's not being conservative in my mind.
Madam President, Larry?
I would like to point to, what page is that? Page 6. The 2020 dues proposal shows that operations is expected to increase under this budget by 7.7%, which is not a huge amount when you compare it to the service provider that is completely outside of our control and is subject to the similar expenses that we're subject to. If the board and the community will note, the major increases proposed for next year have to do with capital, SURF, and roads. And roads, in my opinion, is underfunded in this budget, but that's a further discussion for later. I will point out, though, that 7.7% is not, in my opinion, an outrageous increase.
Other comments? Oh, Sarah?
I guess the second piece to that is, let's talk about the increased percentage we just came off of for this last year. And now we're talking about another 8.6%. That is significant.
It's last year.
Further comments? Move on to hazardous trees. Are you going to review that?
I actually would like it noted that salaries across the entire company, if you look on page 48 of your agenda packet, that's an all department summary, so it's all the departments added together. And if you remove the new maintenance person and you add together this 5300, 5335, and 5385 GL lines for each year and calculate the percentage difference between the two, it is an 8% change, which is very close to the 7.93% that we're seeing in Pacific Security.
Okay. Okay. Are we doing hazardous trees?
Originally, we had placed in here $60,000 for hazardous trees. At the recommendation of the Finance Committee, we have returned that back to $20,000. That has been the number that has been in for the last few years. We have a tendency to go to UDR to address anything above and beyond the $20,000. I will note that this will be an ongoing thing because we are in the forest and trees will continually grow and get bad as they go along. So again, that would be something that we would look at a UDR to the board if we exceed that $20,000.
Carol?
This was an expense that the Finance Committee, I think, regretted making. I mean, when I say regretted, they hesitated to reduce it by 40. It was $40,000 and send it to UDR. The intent was to try to keep the total increase of dues lower for this year. And we checked to see what is in UDR, which is over $200,000 right now. But to a person, they all said, we need to stop going to UDR to fund these kinds of things. And so that was one more item, I would say, that the Finance Committee said, please make a dues proposal for ongoing years that includes all line items. We have the history. So if we're talking about history, it was $59,000 to remove those trees. And we already have a list of hazardous trees that need to be removed that we know is going to exceed 60,000. So it isn't whether you're coming to us for a UDR, it's when you're coming to us for a UDR request. So we're once again kicking the can down the road and hoping that UDR will hold us up for another year. It's a practice that we can't continue to do and stay stable. And I'm hearing from people that trees are one of the most important things. We talked about this at the board meeting. We need to get our trees in shape. The other piece that the Finance Committee asked for was a plan for maintaining our trees and getting them healthy, not just taking them down when they get too old or too sick to be maintained. So we need a more comprehensive plan for tree management than we have at this point in time. And that's a recommendation. So I know this is a lot that the Finance Committee is asking for, and if you want them to come up with a proposal, I'm sure they will, but you're probably going to be blown away by the number of things that they're going to recommend need to be done, because these are all important to people, and they're expensive.
Okay. Larry?
Yes, thank you. 2 points. Trees were raised, and I would suggest that, I have suggested before, I will suggest again, Sudden Valley needs to have some professional tree management. We need somebody on staff who knows how to deal with forests, with trees that many of which are sick, have been sick for years, and which hasn't been maintained properly in years, and can give us some advice and management of the work that needs to be done. I suggested that for this budget. It was rejected because, of course, that's another body, another very expensive thing. I can understand why it wasn't accepted. We need to have that. The Emergency Preparedness Long Range Subcommittee is certainly, from my discussions, we don't have anything official yet, but from my discussions, everyone is in agreement that is the biggest risk facing this community in the next few years, particularly if we keep having dry years. Now, maybe this month isn't all that dry, but March and April and May were very dry, and we are still in a drought officially. So we need to deal with that. However, my original question was very much along the lines of what was just discussed. Is there a way that you can estimate, if we continue drawing down on UDR the way we have been in the last few years, particularly for trees and for package protection during the holiday season, about
removal.
and other
Snow
things?
removal.
I mean, what, you know, I'm including all of that stuff that we've used UDR for. How many years do you think we would be able to rely on UDR? Again, you're balancing what we've been spending out of it versus what we kind of have been getting into it, knowing that the income has been going down because we have far less outstanding than we used to have in terms of debt. So can that be estimated? And if you can do it now, I'd love it, but if you can't, can you make a rough stab at it? I know you deal professionally with exact numbers, but this is one of those, you gotta make a stab at it. How long do we have before this is no longer a viable option?
Relying on UDR for things you don't put in the budget is not a viable option. You know, historically, when I got here, collections were at 83%. And so we had a lot of past collections to collect upon, and all the prior year operations, all those late fees, all those interests, all go into UDR. And so there's been a lot of money in UDR from 2015, 2016, 2017. But if you go back, you'll note that the money going into UDR, I mean, it used to be almost $50,000 a month there for a little while when we were really collecting on that past debt, when we were at 83% collections. And now it's much less, you know, $10,000 or less, $6,000 depending on the month. And so UDR isn't going to last for the long term. It's not a long-term solution for finding a way to fund these things, and it should really be just for emergencies. I know that we have an emergency operating fund that has approximately $350,000 in it, but you don't actually want to have to touch that fund. I mean, what if a bridge fails? You know, maybe, I don't know why it would fail, but what if it did? You're going to need money right away to be able to go and replace that. There could be any number of things, and so you want to leave that money alone, and you honestly really want to leave UDR alone as much as you can, and start putting those items into the operating budget and have it funded by the membership annually. Though I could work on a projection for you, but I don't have that tonight.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, it's clear that where things are going. I was just wondering, okay, that the hatchet is going to fall. Do we have an idea of when?
Eric?
President
Eric?
So we keep talking about the UDR. Could you please remind us all of the ways that UDR actually is funded?
Great. So it is the prior year operational dues that are collected in the current year. So if you're delinquent on your dues, or even if you just didn't pay your dues in December, and you waited and you paid them in January, then those dues that you were due in December that you paid in January go into UDR. It's not the current year's dues. So all those operational portion for prior years collected in the current year goes into UDR. And then it's at the board's discretion how those funds are spent.
Could I guess that there are other things that go into UDR?
Late fees, interest?
Fines?
No, fines go into operations. So
I'm
security
sorry.
fine, ACC fine,
I'm sorry,
NSF
I'm
fees.
asking. If ops at the end of the year has a surplus, where does that money go?
Stays in the operations checking account.
I thought we put it in UDR.
No.
No, we do not.
I have a question on UDR. Can we get a look at what that was spent on over the last 3, 4, 5 years? And see what categories those are and how much for each category? Because we're going to have to eventually fold that into the regular budget.
That's great. I'll prepare something for the next board meeting, but it's actually, just so everyone is aware, it is included in our audited financial statements from 2015 going forward. We include a copy of our internal financial statements appended to the end of our audited statements that the auditor reviews to ensure the numbers are the same, since it's presented in a different format. And on the by department report, underneath operations are all the UDR specific items. So I'll also just prepare a separate report, so it's all on one page, but for the membership, if they wanted to go look it up, that's where they would find it.
Okay. And also, if the board were to elect to bring that $40,000 back into the budget that the Finance Committee suggested we go to UDR for, what effect does that have on dues? How much is that per person per month, approximately?
3 cents times 40,000.
3 cents times 40.
I could tell you exactly if you give me just a moment.
$1.20. $1.20.
$20 a year?
$1.20 a month.
No.
$1.20 a month.
Which is $14.40 a year. 12 times 12,
$14.40 a year?
About.
Or
Thereabouts.
a little more than $1 a month for trees, for safe.
$1.20 a month.
She's figuring it out.
$1.20,
Calculating it
okay.
exactly.
A little more than $1 a month
Yes.
for hazardous trees.
$1.18 for a developed lot.
There you
Okay.
go. $1.20, thereabouts, yep.
Sarah?
I guess my thought is a couple of those revenue projections that I think are way too low and will exceed, we could easily increase and cover that. And I think it's irresponsible of us to know there's a known cost that we are just basically looking the other way at. I mean, obviously, I'm all in favor of reducing our costs and ensuring dues are consistent for members, but I don't want to look the other way, because at the end of the day, we're still going to have to pay that. So we're not solving anything by looking the other way, knowing that we're going to have to pay $60,000 in hazardous trees. Also, that's something that is very important to the members, and those are the areas that I think the members actually care about us spending. And I don't think anyone's going to be upset if we have to put more money in there, because that's a responsible, correct thing to do.
Madam President, Larry.
Yeah, just not only do I agree with that last point, but I'd like to add, trees are not the only thing that the community complains about. While packages may be very important, they definitely talk a lot about snow removal. So if we've had to take snow removal out of UDR and we have some ability to say, okay, over the past 5 or 10 years, how much have we spent on that? Maybe we should roll that into our budget. Is there a way to do that as well, in addition to trees?
Comment on that. I think that a hazardous tree removal is a present danger, and it's a big problem, and we know how big it is, and it's going to be ongoing. Snow is intermittent, and we don't know how much to budget for that. And so maybe UDR is the right place to go for those years that we are really hit with big storms.
Just to respond, I'd like to hear what our accounting staff says about that. You know, are we budgeting enough for snow removal? Should we be budgeting more? I notice accounting looks to the GM.
Yeah. I believe when we did the original budget assumptions with the board, I had put a larger number in there based off of a 5-year, or based off the averages we had. And then it was, again, removed back down to the number that we have had due to the fact that, again, it's, out east, I can pretty much guarantee I'm going to have snow some point in some time. Here, it's very hit or miss. You're much more, I guess you're a better climate out here. But the 15, I believe it's 15,000 we have put in. There was a few years where you didn't use that much, and then last year we used $103,000. A couple years prior to that, you used almost 60. So, and then the next year you used about 11. So I mean, you're all over the place with your snow. I believe I had put in about $30,000, so we cut it in half just to, again, trying to keep the dues in reasonable form as we could. UDR for snow is where I would use that, because that is an emergency. That is a true unforeseen. We do not know. But I did put 30 in there. We may not use any of that this year coming up. We don't know.
There's actually $15,000.
Yeah,
I had put in 30 already.
Yes.
Just to clarify, you're suggesting that we do not need to increase that 15,000?
No, not right. No, I don't think we should. Again, I can't guarantee you if we're going to have snow here next year or not. I don't know.
But you're the expert. That's why I'm asking.
I mean, if we have to go into UDR for a major snow removal, yeah, then that's what that would be, an emergency, unforeseen, something that you cannot predict.
Well, now let me pin you on the spot. Then why did you originally say 30?
Because that was your average over the last few years, highs and lows. I mean, there were some years where you used $7,000. There's years where you used $60,000. So I mean, there was just an average over that course of time.
And so your opinion, either one of those, 15, 30, and somewhere in there could be fine?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I would suggest that we consider putting in 20 instead of 15, because...
We'll talk about that next week.
Yeah, we'll talk about that next week, obviously.
Yeah. Okay, any more on hazardous trees? Okay, pulling mailbox forward.
Two summers, yeah.
Page 7.
Boy, we keep bouncing around.
Is that me?
Yep.
Okay. Let's see. This is Rose. So our mailboxes aren't estimated to be replaced for about 20 years. So at this point, we're pre-funding our mailbox fund, and the 90 cents would have brought us up to a fully funded model in the reserve study. And as we touched on last night, fully funded model as a reserve definition for the terminology means at the end of a 30-year period, you're still 100% funded. So at the 67 cents a month, you're still baseline funding your reserves. So by the time, if we continued that today, we would be able to pay for most of the mailboxes by the time we need them in some 20 years or so. So I think that it's reasonable that we leave that at the 67 cents, which is what it's at this year. And then the Finance Committee, as Carol said last night, recommended to put that additional change into SURF to help continue to fund SURF.
Are the mailboxes in our reserve study?
The mailboxes are actually in the reserve study, yes, and they're in a separate reserve study.
A
So we have-
separate
Yeah, we
area.
have 3 reserve studies, one for surf, one for roads, and one for mailboxes.
Okay. There has been some concern also about the lack of large mailboxes around the holidays. And there was a study done last year on expanding into all of the different cluster areas, a couple of more large boxes and so on and so forth. And this would be, nothing like that is included in this. This is just replacement of our existing boxes.
Correct. If we wanted to get some new, larger mailboxes, that's new capital, and it was not included in this funding model. We do have about $5,000 currently in our mailbox fund. So, that could go towards those new mailboxes. And then if you spent that money and you wanted to continue to fund a reserve, you probably want to increase that amount next year or the year after.
Does anyone know, sorry for busting in, Mike, does anyone know how much that 5,000 would buy us from these? Staff has an idea?
About
Yes,
5
yes, sir.
Mailboxes are about $1,600 a piece.
Mailboxes are $1,600 a piece. Okay, so that would go a little ways then.
What about the large package boxes? Are they the same, or would they be a little less?
It'd be a little less, but the company that builds them, that has a patent on them, won't go with that.
Oh, well, that doesn't help.
We have some current experience with this. Last year, a car ran over a couple of mailboxes at 813 that had to be replaced. And how long did it take, Bruce, to source those mailboxes to replace them? It was a couple.
I went back to the original one, purchasing. It was about 3 weeks.
And they cost, if I remember right, on the order of $1,600. Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else on mailboxes? All right. Do we want to take about a 10-minute break and then start into roads? Okay. Let's take a 10-minute break, 8:40, 10 minutes to 9, we come back. Okay, let's call the meeting back to order at 10 minutes to 9. And we have left here the roads fund.
Okay, I'll address most of this. As you can see up on the bigger screen, which I think will be easier for everybody to read than this small print, what we have slated for 2020, if you look at R3 and R4, which would be line 22 and 23, that is microsurface.
Is this in our packet?
Yes, it's on the very last page,
Okay.
page 121. But again, it is so small.
Yes.
It would be probably better to read it up on the big board. What you see is the microsurfacing, which was supposed to be done last year, got moved to this year, as well as what was slated to do this year. So that will begin next Friday is their mobilization and start date. So they were supposed to be this week, but they had some issues with weather and getting projects started, but they will be starting next Friday. As their schedule states right now. But as you see, we were supposed to do it in a 4-year time frame. Last year, this year, next year, and the following year. What I did was move next year's out 1 year, just for the simple fact that I have never used this material. I cannot tell you what it'll do, what it won't do, how well it will hold up. I do not want to commit, as you see in 2021, $533,000 right now on a product that I don't know if it's going to work or not. I would rather save that money if it does not work and find another process. So that's why 2021, 2022, if it does work, we will do those. We just kicked them out a year just for my own personal thing to make sure that they will work, that the process will work. The next thing is we moved Midnight report, the design was supposed to be next year, but it was not going to be done until 2025, I do believe is the year it was supposed to be done. So all I did is move that engineer work out closer to the project to be done. There was no need to spend the money now at this point for a project that's 5 years down the road. So we moved that one out. As well as the stormwater mitigation down in the parking lot. Working with the county to see if we get that pushed out. They are in agreement to help us move that out right now, since we do have to do it. There's no way around it. Unfortunately, they don't have a phosphorus mitigation bank that we could buy into. We will have to do this, but they have given me a little bit more time to move that out so that we don't have to spend the funds right now. We have a chance to hopefully build some more reserves and go that route as well. So that is the only things that I have moved. What you see is all of the design work that we're doing this year, all those projects will be done next year in this budget. At Finance, when this budget was presented, we had no increase to the roads budget. At the Finance Committee, they recommended a $4.84 increase to go into reserves, to start building our reserves for that. So we will come out next year with $419,000 as a carryover.
Questions? Mike?
Yeah, Joe,
Would you pull your microphone a little closer, please?
Windward, we're starting Windward.
That is, we have design on that, and that will be worked on next year, I do believe, is what it's slated. The retaining wall is what you're discussing?
Yes, okay,
Yeah.
I see that. I'm sorry. I was in the wrong column.
Sarah?
Where is you said Finance Committee recommended 404 increase,
484.
484.
Yeah, that is
sorry.
on page, it's in the beginning of your,
It's on page 7 of your agenda packet, and then
7.
on this page here for roads in front of you,
Yeah.
you can see that it's under revenues, 2020 proposed, oh, I apologize, it says surf income, I should say roads income, for $4.84 a month, 168, 226.
And then, can you explain at the bottom of page 122, so that last page, there's monthly roads assessment analysis. But what's the second one there, the negative $7.23 under 2020, what is that?
Great, so as we were talking last night, just the same with surf, every year I wanted to let the board know how much do you need to increase or decrease the dues in this capital fund to fund it per the reserve study. So basically, it's like giving a special assessment every year. If your expenses are really high, you need more money in order to spend all the money and bring you back down to just your minimum board recommended balance. Or if your expenses are lower the next year, then you really need a reduction in your dues that year. So that's why on page 7, there's all those fluctuations up and down year over year.
Based on what the next year's, and that's based on the next year's expenses? Okay, thanks.
Questions? Larry?
It's not really a question, so I'm not sure if this is the right time to talk about this.
Probably not. I mean, I think we're here to just examine this information, and next week, when we have our meeting, we actually will give our input on where we think the budget should go. So if there's something that you need staff to provide for you or something like that, that would be a
Okay,
good-
all right,
good
yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, okay. That's it?
But I do have one question.
I was hoping.
I know, you really want to get out of here.
Did I think I'd get away?
You said something.
Did I think I'd get away?
And maybe I misheard it. But I wanted to get a clarification. Parking lots, did I hear you talk about?
At
The marina?
No, the golf parking lot.
The golf parking lot.
That is where the mitigation is supposed to go?
Right, despite the fact that we already did something when we opened up the creek, so there,
That is for the work that you guys have done prior.
Right.
Without, I guess, approval. I think it was done. Ditches and swales, you had to mitigate so much for that was not done prior. So that is a county, it's coming from the county. So I got them to push, it was supposed to be done this year, design and build next year, but I've got them to push it out a little bit longer for us.
okay, and that's, what you just said is very confusing. What have ditches and swales elsewhere in the community got to do with the golf parking lot?
That is the area where we could mitigate. We have a big enough area so that whenever we do something, we have this space already set aside. So we're buying ahead for anything that we do for mitigation.
It's like an environmental reserve?
Yes.
A bank?
Yeah, like I said, the county does not have a phosphorus bank to buy into. We will have it here on our property for whenever we do any work.
In the future?
In the future.
Okay, all right. I'd like to work with you on that when you talk to the county, because I'm not sure they're giving us adequate credit.
Yeah.
I would, we can discuss that at another date.
It's a different issue.
Yes.
Thank you.
A follow-on to that, you said we were supposed to do that this year. That was according to our budget, not according to county mandate.
No, it was, design was supposed to start this year per the county.
For the county?
Per the
Okay.
county. We had a meeting with the county and
But we need more discussion.
I persuaded them to give me a little bit more time.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Madam President, excuse me, Whitney?
Whitney?
Can you explain what the Midnight Court project is?
That I don't know. I'm going to take a stab that it is a road that is in this community that needs to be rebuilt. Larry might have.
Yeah, point of information. We've been working on that bloody road for years.
Okay.
Midnight Court, if I remember correctly, is out towards Topper Lane.
No.
It's not? Isn't that?
Bruce?
You talk.
Come this way.
Can you get to
Come up to
a
a mic.
microphone, please? Yeah.
Midnight Court is essentially up at the north end of Harborview. It
Right.
branches off, there's Rosebud goes one way, then Midnight Court.
It's close to Topper View, or Topper,
Yes.
right, yeah,
Okay.
right.
That road was never installed properly. It's, using my hands, it's got a real steep bank this way. Water runs down into a residence area. Big hump, person coming down has a hard time getting in and out. So that project was to reestablish that road so it's proper.
Right, and to address yours, we've known about this for several years. The question is, it's expensive, because it almost literally is rebuilding a road the way it should have been built, which is a lot more expensive than anything we normally do. Thanks, Bruce.
Okay. I think we're ready. Eric?
I'd like to make a motion to rise out of this committee of the whole, and then further, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Before we second that, I would just like to say that, and on behalf of all the board, thank you for the managers that put that budget together. I think you've done a remarkable job. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'd second that. This has
Yeah.
been the most revealing budget-setting process that I've ever experienced since I moved here. Lord knows, the first one I went to in 2011 was absolute gobbledygook. And this is, while it's certainly not clear and simple, it's just so much better.
It's
I
thorough.
cannot tell you how much the improvement is.
Yeah, Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well done.
Thank you. Okay, and with Mike's second, and I'm sure that you're all going to approve, we will adjourn at 9:02.